What if I told you the federal government might eliminate workplace safety regulations as we know them? A new bill aims to do just that. In today's video, we're going to break down what this bill is all about, what it means for workers in our industry, and what it might mean for standards moving forward. For the third time, Representative Andy Biggs, who's a Republican from Arizona, has introduced a bill to abolish Occupational Safety and Health Administration, otherwise known as OSHA. Now, I have come in contact with OSHA a few times over the years in my careers, and I say careers because, working at different companies and so on. OSHA has been around for, I believe, almost 50 years now. It was introduced back in the 70s. Richard Nixon is the president that signed the bill into law, and OSHA ultimately oversees a bunch of different things when it comes to regulating safety and all kinds of hazards at work. And when I first saw this article, I was like, what is this all about? Why would someone want to abolish this? OSHA was established under the Department of Labor and enforces workplace safety regulations. And the new bill is called HR 86. It's to nullify OSHA, and some are calling it the NOSHA Act. So if you hear me call it that later in this video, that's what I'm talking about. The bill was introduced on January 3rd, 2025, and it's aiming to appeal the OSHA Act of 1970. HR 86 was referred to the House Committee on Education and the Workforce, but no further action has been taken. Similar bills from Biggs in 2021 and 2023 failed to advance. My biggest thing was, why does this guy want to abolish OSHA? Did OSHA do something bad to him? When I was very early on in my career, I actually originally went to school to be an electrician, and I was working at an electrical company, and there was actually a maintenance guy that died in this factory, and OSHA came in to see what's going on, see why it happened, see who's responsible, and so on. And I remember thinking, well, that's a good thing. Unless the police are going to come in and do something like that, I don't necessarily hate the idea of this. But over the years and different interactions and hearing different stories about OSHA, I do think that there are times when maybe they major in the minors. Maybe they're worried about putting fines and fees on folks for things that maybe was out of their control, or maybe they could have done things better, but maybe it's not the end of the world that they, didn't tie off that ladder a certain way or whatever. Ultimately, I wondered, what is the reason for this guy wanting to get rid of OSHA? And his rationale is that he argues that OSHA overreaches into state-managed safety programs, citing Arizona's higher safety standards. He also criticizes OSHA's role in enforcing COVID-19 vaccine mandates, which the Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional at one point. And I will say, I get that. If he's saying that OSHA is pushing a political agenda, whether you do or don't think that these vaccines are a good thing, that's not something I'm going to get into in this video. But it's obvious that the Supreme Court felt the same way on that issue. Now, in opposition, there's an organization called the National Consumers League, and they oppose this bill. They're warning that eliminating OSHA would endanger millions of workers, especially those in vulnerable communities. Now, I don't know. I think that I'm not going to get into all that. I hate when folks play that card and it's all about the communities. But I think ultimately, just understanding that they're saying that this could endanger millions of workers. And I don't know that I disagree with that. I think there have been times where maybe OSHA was the one stepping in, fighting for that worker who was in an unsafe position. I'd love to hear more on this. I'd love to hear that representative say, hey, there's a little more to it than that. Here's kind of what we're thinking. If he just doesn't want a federal agency coming into his state to enforce their safety standards, or is it a money thing or whatever? I don't quite understand his rationale, at least from this article. I'll put a link to this article down in the description of this video. Finally, it says the outlook given past failures, HR 86 is unlikely to advance. However, it continues to fuel debates over the state versus federal workplace safety regulations. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think that folks looking into the validity of OSHA and wanting to make changes Maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe they can end up making things better. We shall see. At the end of the day, I think as long as it's a win-win, if it means that things are going to be safer for the workers, but it's also not as encumbersome. That's always been my biggest problem, is if you're supposed to be making things safer, maybe an OSHA representative, if they were to come on a job site and see a few safety issues, if they were to try to educate the workers and say, hey, here's why this needs to be done so that you're safer, that's one thing. But I will say I have heard stories. I've been in contact with individuals who have said, OSHA came on our job site, the guy looked around, and then I got a fine 2 weeks later. I got these exorbitant high prices of fines because they saw something we weren't doing to their standard. That I'm not totally okay with. And so I think there's a right way to handle these things, and maybe bills like this might address those ways of handling things. Maybe they'll fix their practices on that front. What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear them down in the comment section. If you like this video, I think you'll like this one even more. It's where I talk about how the USA is stockpiling banned refrigerants and why. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button for more HVAC tips. We'll see you next time.